Welcome to State of the World. I'm Sally Lockwood, not in Dubai. I am in the UK this time.
Hey, I'm Tara Palmeri, and I am based in New York. Sal, how does it feel to be home?
Yeah, I mean, it's great actually. I'm on the road for the next couple of weeks out of the Middle East, but of course that's still home. But I've just got back to the UK for my sister's wedding, which is really exciting. Although I've just learnt in the last 2 days that the only thing worse than traveling long haul with a toddler is toddler jet lag. Oh my God.
Poor baby.
Like 3 a.m. starts. If anyone has any tips, please DM me. I have no idea what to do. I am exhausted. And yeah, I'm still learning how to do all this stuff. So
Well, you look
if I'm not on the
fab.
best form, that's why.
Well, the good news is that we're not getting into anything too heavy this week. We're not talking about Palestine and Israel and
No.
Ukraine and Russia. We're going to talk about something very absurd, in my opinion, and that
Okay.
is the fact that the monarch, the king, King Charles III, had to go to Canada this week to reinforce that it is a real country. It is not something that President Trump can turn into a 51st state. I mean,
I
Sal, like,
love this. Is it
what?
is that how it's been perceived in the States? Do people just think this is hilarious and ridiculous? Because the
Yes.
UK press goes nuts for royal stuff and the Canadian press has gone absolutely nuts over this visit.
I mean, we don't care as much, to be honest. Like, we love our royals when they're being like naughty or like the Meghan Markle. No, for some reason, we're just like not that obsessed with King Charles anymore because like people love Diana. But the fact for me as like a political junkie that the last time that a monarch, Queen Elizabeth, went to Canada to open parliament was back in 1977, and they felt the need to invite the king back again in 2025, okay? Because times are so weird. Like, the people of Canada hate America. They hate us. They're boycotting our goods. Trump is slapping tariffs on Canada, on our trading partner. And so, like, you have the king there being like, no, this is a real country. We're going to, solidify these alliances. And then, like, Justin Trudeau shows up in these absurd, like, I don't know if you saw, he was wearing trainers that kind
I
of
know,
are
it was
seen
the
as
talking point,
disrespectful.
wasn't it? Everything
Yeah.
apparently was like word perfect except for Justin Trudeau's footwear.
I mean, he,
I
he
mean,
obviously did that on purpose. He's a
okay.
limelight lover, don't you think?
Oh, I
Just
mean,
wants some attention.
maybe, I don't know. But I would say that all the royal stuff, I've never been into it, if I'm honest. Like, it's the sort of journalism that I would never, ever want to do is like the royal beat. It's just not my vibe. I find it all really quite sycophantic and
Yeah.
like not proper journalism. Sorry, forgive me if you're a royal like reporter, because some of you are absolutely fantastic, but it's just not what I find really interesting. And it's interesting how seriously some of the outlets are taking it. I was listening to a podcast earlier about King Charles' visit to Ottawa, and there was lots of chin stroking going on. And do you think this has annoyed Donald Trump? And I thought to myself, that's a really good question for Tara. Did he care?
I don't think so. Really don't. Like, I read this independent article and they were like, Trump must be so jealous that Canada got a visit from the king. I think he has so much shit on his mind. I don't know if you know this, but overnight, the International Trade Court overruled the tariffs. He's furious.
Yeah, I saw
Like,
that.
this is really bad. He's got to pass a budget. Like, again, it's one of these like foreign issues where I think ultimately Trump is like, cool. Still gonna say should be the 51st state. But
Was he even serious about that anyway? All of this narrative and language saying that they're going to annex Canada and make it the 51st state of America. I mean, was he ever really serious, or was that just, almost just trying to wind Canada up and play to his base?
I think it was certainly like playing to his base, manifest destiny, his like imperial instincts where like it was like a natural instinct at one point to like add to your legacy by way of expanding territory. So I think like there is a part of him that would love the idea of being able to say that when he was president, the borders of the United States expanded, whether it was like Panama, strategic positions like Greenland, or even Canada. I think there is like a shred of something to it. Obviously, the fentanyl crisis is a problem with the borders, but it's not as bad with Canada as it is with Mexico. And yeah, it's a bit of tweaking the libs and like owning the libs, as they say. But It's kind of funny. I don't know if you know about South Park. Is that popular in the UK?
Yeah, of course. Of
Yeah,
course.
so like South Park, they have that song "Blame Canada, Blame Canada." It's not even a real country anyway, and it's
Yeah.
like, like in a very weird way, this whole saga taps into like the truth about a lot of the American psyche is that like Americans don't really stay up at night thinking about Canadians. A lot of
No.
Americans see a lot of Canadians on TV. They sound like us. They look like us. A lot of the greatest comedians, like Jim Carrey, came from Canada. People don't even talk about it. And it's just like we kind of look at it as a 51st state. We don't even really like we have Canadians come and vacation here. A lot of them own homes in Florida and like other places. So it's like we kind of think about it that way anyway. I mean, one of my best friends is Canadian. I remember I went to Ottawa for the first time for Canada Day and I was like, this is hilarious. But like it's a real country. But the truth is like Matt Stone and the South Park gang, they really like tapped into something that is true, that like Americans do have this sort of like this ego about themselves and what their country represents. And it's like, I don't know, do British people kind of feel this way about Ireland a little bit? I know their relationship is a bit more fractured because they've been fighting for many years, but there's got to be
Oh,
something where you
yeah.
feel like, oh yeah, like that's just our silly neighbor, you know what I'm saying? Or like,
Well, look, I have to
Scott.
tread carefully here because I have an Irish husband, but
Oh,
I
right,
would
right, right. We
say
love
that actually,
Ro.
well, I would say though, it's been actually really interesting to learn the perception Ireland has of England, and that actually people in England don't really talk about the relationship with Ireland. I've got Irish friends who said it wasn't until they moved to England they were like, oh, we've spent a lot of time talking about how much we hate the English and our history, and actually we get here and English people are like, what, you hate us? What?
Exactly. Yeah.
But
I mean,
on the Canada thing, though, it's really interesting because I was listening to people being interviewed who were saying things like, we feel really vulnerable now since Donald Trump started saying all these
yeah.
things. And obviously, that's what won Mark Carney the election. He became prime minister because he campaigned on an anti-Trump ticket. And now Canada's taking it, well, seemingly really seriously, trying to forge new trade partnerships, like coming closer to Europe on defense and stuff. And then, you see King Charles, sweeping into Ottawa to read the opening of Parliament speech from the throne, something that hasn't happened in nearly 50 years. And the guy is still being treated for cancer. And he's like flown into Canada and, carried out this really exceptional, historic moment. And so, yeah, I think, we may be thinking this is slightly absurd, but actually, it seems that the Canadian government is taking this really seriously, and it sounds as though they liaised quite closely with Downing Street on all this as well. So the two governments discussed it. It was, obviously agreed by King Charles. He didn't have to go. He was willing. And it was to reinforce Canada's sovereignty and independence and, unity. And it's really interesting because if you look at the polls now, they're having a bit of a love-in with the royals, They've really soared in popularity since Trump started threatening to annex them. So it's just so
Yeah.
interesting. The whole world order is just upside down. And it's quite timely that I'm here in the UK, because you do get a sense with all the British headlines and media coverage, that this is a big deal. They love royal stuff. But the
And
Canadians
how is
have
it
been lapping it up
playing?
as well.
How is it playing in the UK? What are they saying?
Well, I mean, largely positive. King Charles certainly pushes the boundaries more than the Queen did. She was, celebrated for having this really neutral stance, being completely apolitical. And King Charles has been pretty controversial in getting involved in certain issues and lobbying ministers. That was revealed around 10 years ago. These what was it called? It was something like the Black Spider memos were released to the public, and they were called Black Spider memos because of his scrawly handwriting, and it was these notes that he was writing to ministers at the top level of government before he became king, lobbying them on certain issues. Some of it was conservation, other stuff was to do with the Iraq war. So it was quite revealing, and I guess that the royal watchers have been watching pretty closely how he was going to behave as monarch. He's not overstepped the line constitutionally in any way, but he's definitely pushing the boundaries. I mean, you saw after that Oval Office meltdown with Zelensky and Trump, King Charles hosted Zelensky just days later, really publicly, here in the UK at his Norfolk estate, Sandringham, as a show of support. That wasn't by accident.
Right.
And, he went to Rome recently and had a state visit there at a time where the UK is trying to rebuild its relationship with Europe. And then you see this Ottawa trip at a time where Trump is threatening to annex Canada. None of this is, by accident. It's definitely by design, and it's to send a strong message. And does Donald Trump care about that message? Has the
It's
message been
interesting that
received?
you're right. It's interesting that the king has become so political when the queen was very careful with politics, right? And that the king is truly trying to put his finger on
Yeah,
the scale.
but what I would say is that he is, I think, at the moment reflecting the public mood. People here seem to be absolutely fine with it. From what I've been reading, no one's really
Yeah.
being very critical that he's sending out these quite public messages of support for certain countries and certain leaders. So I think for now it's working for him. But, who's to say whether that might change if we get Prime Minister Farage in 4 years' time, Like,
Jeez.
he
Yeah.
might find himself walking a tighter tightrope.
Yeah.
Anyway, Donald Trump
I
can
thought it was
discuss all this
savvy
with
though.
him when he comes over on his state visit in
Right.
September,
Yeah,
we
exactly. I
think.
thought that was really savvy that the king did that as well. Wrote him a letter, invited him for a state visit. Made Trump feel really important. And then in the message to Canada in the Parliament, Trump was never mentioned once, but he sort of
Yeah.
hung over all of it. And he did say, we should help with the borders and the fentanyl crossing and increasing relationships. So the whole world order is definitely reorganizing, and this will definitely be a chapter in the Crown.
Yeah, for sure. But what's also, I think, really interesting about this whole power play is that Trump seems to really love the royals, right? So if
Oh
anyone is
yeah,
going to potentially have some influence over Donald Trump, it'll be the king, you'd think.
totally.
We know that Mark Carney had a private meeting with King Charles while he was in Canada. Zelensky also had a private audience with King Charles when he was over on his visit recently. And obviously Donald Trump will too. We never learn the contents of those conversations. A bit like Keir Starmer, he has a weekly meeting with the king. That is tradition. The Queen always did it with the serving prime minister. And you never know what is said in those meetings, but I'd love to be a fly on the wall for Donald Trump and King Charles, because I do think that he can exert a certain influence over Trump more than other world leaders, just because Trump does seem to have this huge admiration for the royal family.
Oh yeah, it's a kind of it's something that can't be bought. Being born into the lineage like that. But it doesn't leak out. Like it never gets out through the press what the conversation is. Really?
I think once there was maybe a slip of the tongue by David Cameron. I'd have to look it up. And the Queen
Once.
once revealed something about her views on the Scottish independence referendum. But, it was really benign, but those sorts of things are seen as a really big deal when they're leaked, because there is still, this tradition and all these really strict rules around the monarchy and them remaining apolitical, and the fact that they have this weekly meeting, but we never know what's said. We never know what the monarch is saying to the leader of the country. It's really interesting. And so, yeah, I'm sure Donald Trump, if anyone's going to reveal it, it could be him,
Yeah, he loves to talk about those kind of conversations. Yeah. Just
Discretion is
ask him
not
afterward.
his biggest attribute.
No, nope.
But yeah, he was only in Ottawa for 24 hours, but it made a huge impact here and in Canada. It was seen as a really big deal. So interesting, huh?
Were Canadians always into being a part of the Commonwealth? Like, because, there are certain members of the Commonwealth that are kind of like, ugh, we hate the monarchy. And, like, they have to be careful
Yeah.
about when they go and visit. Like, a lot of the islands, frankly, like the Caribbean islands, they don't have
100%.
great, they don't have great feelings. I loved when I looked at the parliament, like people are there representing the Algonquin people, like the natives of Canada, the native people, and they actually like wear their full, garb, which we don't do in America at all. We really don't give enough appreciation for the people that were conquered by colonialists. But I mean,
Yeah.
what is the sentiment? Has it shifted in the favor of the monarchy?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. Look, I don't have the exact figures, but it's no secret that a lot of Commonwealth countries feel that it's a really redundant kind of connection now. They have this royal family who are essentially leaders of their state, yet they don't have any affiliation or relationship or any kind of real connection with this weird island called Britain, which is like miles and miles away. And so, yeah, I mean, we've seen for many years now, like these anti-royal protests whenever senior royals make visits to these Commonwealth countries. Australia, for instance, they've had an anti-royal family sentiment for a long time. But it's interesting, Canada, they've had the same. But on this visit, not only have the polls shown that there is now, I think, 66% of Canadians are in support of retaining the monarchy, that they find it a useful relationship to have, which is like a large number, and that's jumped quite a lot. King Charles's popularity is up like several points as well. So it's really interesting. They now see it as actually a relevant relationship to have just because Donald Trump is a disruptor and things are now, not what they were. Traditional alliances aren't as reliable as they were. It's interesting, right?
A win for the monarchs, no longer having
Well,
to
it's a good
deal with
time to
their.
be. It's a good time to be a member of the royal family, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Something that they've struggled with for a long time.
Have the
Sal,
American press have the American press really covered this story? And if they have, what's the tone been?
it's like not really. I mean, it's not a big
Really?
deal here, but I think it's amazing. I mean, probably. Let me see the tone. The tone. ABC News. King Charles III defends Canada's sovereignty in speech to open Parliament. I'll do a little. King Charles says Canada faces unprecedented dangers. It's like it's not an A1 story for us. Like our country's on fuego right now. Okay. Like
Yeah.
every day it is on fire. We have a lot of stuff going on right now. So no, it's not it's kind of like again it's like again a lot of people see it as a sideshow.
So that's really interesting. You're saying that obviously, you've said this for weeks now, T, that just Donald Trump's domestic issues are now just taking priority. And he's like
Yeah.
not talking about some of these global issues hardly as much, like even Ukraine and Gaza. He's really not touched on that sort of stuff for weeks in the way that he did right at the beginning of his presidency. And even the monopoly board of the world, according to Donald Trump, he's sort of started talking less about buying Greenland and turning Canada into the 51st state,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's got a bill to pass that probably is going to have a hard time passing through the Senate and the House. This tax bill, if they don't pass it, the tax rates go back up. It'll be huge problems with them in the midterms, ballooning deficit. We have some problems in the United States right now. Like it was all fun and games for the first few months, but like, and this was a real slap in the face from the trade court that he can't do his tariffs. So yes. And also he thought it would be easy. He thought being Donald Trump and the art of the deal would make it easy. And as I've said for the past month or so, he's getting tired of it. And I think it's very clear right now. And especially with Putin, like he's being played. He keeps asking for 2-week extensions upon 2 weeks extensions, and like Trump is growing tired of it. And let's not forget, America First is about isolation. It's not about getting involved in other affairs. So
Yeah.
it doesn't really marry well with Manifest Destiny, but he wants to also have a legacy. And he thinks very, as you said, monopoly board. So I don't know. We'll have to check in next week and see if life has changed, if Trump has somehow achieved something in all of this. But Sally, I hope you have so much fun at your sister's wedding. Sounds amazing.
Oh, thank you so much. Hopefully, I'll get some sleep beforehand. I read
know,
something
poor
yesterday that really
baby.
resonated. That what was it? Parenthood makes you a morning person, a bit like running away from a bear makes you a runner. And that is
Aw.
my life right now. So yeah, hopefully we'll get some sleep with the jet lag tonight, and yeah, wedding this Saturday. But I'll be in Spain when I speak to you next. So I'll see you there. Off
Yay!
to
Have
Spain for
fun in
another wedding.
Spain.
And
Love
let's
that.
see where we are next week on this Trump train that we never really know where it's going.
That was another episode of State of the World. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please subscribe, comment, like it, share it with your friends. We'll be back every week.
We'll see you next week.